Okay, 8th grade, so it is Monday. We're in our reading packet today. So we jump ahead a little bit. So we jumped ahead to page 63, which is the assessment. So I'm just going to be walking you through these questions and how you would answer these questions. We're not going to do the long question at the end. We're just going to do pages 63 to 66 today. So we're not going to worry about 67 and 68. So here we're going to read this story together, and then I won't be able to answer the questions for you because, like I said, it is one of those assessments. But like I always do, I'll walk you through each of the questions. That way you can better understand them. And then this will be our last day in the reading packet. So we'll be in the writing packet tomorrow. And yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into this. So we're reading this passage called Fighting the Factory, the Arts and Crafts Movement. So it says, plain functional furniture, simple woven rugs, decorative handmade wall hangings inspired by nature, handmade jewelry. These were just some of the objects produced and purchased by those who supported the arts and crafts movement, a back-to-basics style that first emerged in Britain during the latter half of the 19th century. The arts and crafts movement was much more than just eye-catching objects inspired by the simple country life. It was based off ideals and fueled by the dissatisfaction of many of Britain's citizens. A dresser executed in the arts and crafts style was suddenly no longer just a dresser. It was a symbol of the beliefs of both the maker and the buyer. The arts and crafts movement, understanding the times. Looking at the historical context of the arts and crafts movement, it is vital to understand its deeper meaning. At the time, Britain was becoming very industrialized. Many people moved from small rural communities to large cities. In these urban areas, factory work was the way of life. The practice of mass production was catching on. As a result, there was a dramatic shift in how many objects were produced. A description of furniture making before and after industrialization provides a good illustration of the extent of the change. Before industrialization, craftspeople spent years perfecting their technique. They knew how to create a certain object from start to finish. They would gather the wood or other materials they needed. They would use tools to cut and shape these materials into individual pieces and then assemble them. Finally, they would add any finishing touches. This might involve applying wood stain or adding some decorative metal accents. The final result was a truly one-of-a-kind creation of the highest quality. As Britain became more industrialized, furniture was often made in factories using a principle called division of labor. Each worker would be responsible for a tiny part of the production process. One person might just screw on legs or apply paint. They did this hour after hour, day after day. Little skill was needed. Many virtually identical pieces were produced very quickly. The philosophy behind arts and crafts. Those who helped found the arts and crafts movement also developed its underlying philosophy. Ideas behind the movement included the notion that craftspeople should get a deep satisfaction and pleasure from their work. This could not be achieved by dividing the production process into small tasks to be performed separately by many individuals. Rather, it required a master craftsperson who had honed the skill and talent needed to be personally invested in and responsible for the final product. Some, but by no means all, supporters of this movement were also against the use of any machinery during the production process. The arts and crafts movement did not have a rigid set of rules. However, pieces produced in this style share some basic characteristics. They were made using traditional techniques developed by craftspeople in their workshops in the country. Using materials in their natural form was also an important aspect of the arts and crafts movement. For instance, the wood used to make a dresser might be stained to embellish its grain, but it would likely not be completely covered with paint. Simple shapes were used in the creation of pieces, and designs were often inspired by plants, flowers, and other objects found in nature. Overall, designs could be accurately described as simple and plain, but this also gave arts and crafts work their rustic charm. The legacy of the arts and crafts movement. The principles of Britain's arts and crafts movement played a part in the development of similar styles and movements in other parts of Europe and the United States. Clearly, though, the arts and crafts movement did not succeed in halting the trend toward mass production, either in Europe or elsewhere. Walk into any furniture store today, and you will see shelves containing dozens of identical lamps and vases, as well as tables put together piece by piece, screw by screw, on factory assembly lines. As a final note, it is important to keep in mind that the goods currently sold by large department stores and national chains don't tell the entire story. There are many exhibitions, shows, and local markets where the spirit of the arts and crafts movement is alive and well. Craftspeople and artists can still be found selling pottery, jewelry, and other decorative objects made the old-fashioned way. As long as there are talented and dedicated people out there willing to be a part of their unique, high-quality, handmade creations, the legacy of the arts and crafts movement will live on. So let's move on to 65 so we can look at these questions together, and we will walk through all of these. Again, we're just going to page 66 today. So it says this question has two parts. First answer part A, then answer part B. Which of the following is a key idea developed in paragraph 6 of the passage? So we need to go back to the story to figure out what paragraph 6 says. So paragraph 6 says, those who helped found the arts and crafts movement also developed its underlying philosophy. Ideas behind the movement included the notion that craftspeople should get a deep satisfaction and pleasure from their work. This could not be achieved by dividing the production process into small tasks to be performed separately by many individuals. Rather, it required a master craftsperson who had honed the skill and talent needed to be personally invested in and responsible for the final product. Some, but by no means all, supporters of this movement were also against the use of any machinery during the production process. Also, these bolded parts are the major descriptor of what you're about to read. So like here, you're going to read about the arts and craft movement and understanding the times. This is talking all about the philosophy behind arts and crafts. So that's just something to keep in mind when answering this question. So if you look at the possible answers, it says, arts and crafts furniture was made by craftspeople in country workshops. After industrialization, few furniture makers could create an object from start to finish. C, little skill is required when the production process is divided up into small tasks. D, building furniture should involve more than just physical skill. So what this all is talking about here is more than one of these might be true, right? But you need to talk about what is the key idea or the main idea, which we talked about back when we did the first packet. What is the main idea of that paragraph? So if you need to go back and read that again, you can. Again, there's numbers next to the paragraphs, but you need to say which is the main idea of that paragraph. Then if you look here, it says which sentence from paragraph 6 best supports your answer to A. So if you decided that the answer is A, I'm not saying that is the answer or that it's not the answer, but if you chose A, you need to decide which one of these best supports that answer. Okay? So there's not really a whole lot more to walk through this until you answer part A. So let's take a look at 23. Which of the following statements express principles by which the products of the arts and crafts and industrial movements can be categorized? Select all that apply. So I will go ahead and tell you right now that there is only 2 answers here. So you need to pick just 2. It says pick all that apply. There's only 2. Okay? So it says arts and crafts pieces refer to the outdoors, while industrial works suggest features of the city. And this question is asking you, express principles by which the products of the arts and crafts and industrial movements can be categorized. So what that's saying is it's talking about what's the difference between arts and crafts pieces versus industrial pieces. Which one of those is true? So here it's saying arts and crafts is talking about outdoors while industrial talks about features of the city. Is that true? No, because you can be making a dining room table. The arts and crafts people can be making a dining room table. That's for inside or for the city. It has nothing to do with the city or the outdoors. Arts and crafts pieces derive from a single mind, while industrial work allows for the idea of many workers. Arts and crafts pieces are unique, while industrial works are uniform in appearance, which means that they're all the same. D, arts and crafts works are eye-catching decorative objects, while industrial pieces are plain and unattractive. Is this an opinion or is it a fact? That's an opinion. So we can't have an opinion being the correct answer here. Okay, this is just talking about the differences between the arts and crafts and the industrial work, and opinions don't have their place in that. E says arts and crafts work are assembled all at once, while industrial pieces take many steps. And F, arts and crafts works are each produced by one individual, while industrial pieces are each produced by many individuals. So you need to pick, excuse me, you need to pick which two. Again, it says select all that apply. There's only two. Which two are true for this one? So let's go on to page 66. It says, which of the following statements illustrates an important point of comparison between the arts and crafts and industrial movements? So it's saying, what's the similarities or differences between the two? It's kind of asking a similar question to the last one. So A says, arts and crafts was driven by personal philosophy, while industrial work was about the efficiency of labor. Now, philosophy is talking about, like, what you feel like is best, like what your idea on something is, your opinion, sort of. B says the industrial movement invested in the value of the individual, while arts and crafts followers saw little use in the distinct talents of craftspeople. Is B true at all? No, it's the exact opposite, because arts and crafts was focusing on individual people and what they could do, whereas the industrial movement focused less on the talents of craftspeople and more on how they can make. Have you ever heard the phrase quality over quantity? Well, industrialization cares more about the amount that they get than the quality of the work that they're making. Arts and crafts methods necessarily create interesting pieces, while it's impossible for industrial produced works to be pleasing. Modern stores reflect a public acceptance of industrial work, while arts and crafts lives on only in the spirit of its ideas. So it's comparing the two. It's comparing arts and crafts to industrial work. It's more so contrasting because it's talking about how they're different. But which one of these, it says illustrates an important point. I mean, there can be more than one important point, but which one makes the best point, do you think? Okay? So, number 25 says, read the sentence from paragraph 7. Overall, designs could be accurately described as simple and plain, but this also gave arts and crafts work their rustic charm. So, in this sentence, what does the phrase rustic charm suggest? So, what do you think that phrase rustic charm means? A, arts and crafts pieces were not as plain as they seemed. Arts and crafts pieces represent a simpler way of life. C, the decorative accents appealed to people from the city. Or D, the designs were inspired by old rusty antiques. So let's go ahead and eliminate 2 right off the bat. It says they could be accurately, which means that that's true, right? Truly described as simple and plain. So does that mean that they're not plain? No, it's not saying that they're not plain. It is saying that them being plain is not a bad thing, but they are, in fact, plain. So A is not the right answer. If we go down to C, the decorative element accents appeal to people from the city. There's not really any decorative accents, right? They're simple, they're plain, and some people like that for whatever reason, but C is not going to be our answer. So between B and D, you need to pick which one of those you think is the correct answer. So which one of those describe what rustic charm means? Okay, now here we need to be using the RACE strategy as always, which is restate, answer, cite, and explain. So identify 2 details that are important enough to be included in the summary of Fighting the Factory, the arts and craft movement. Write your response in complete sentences. So we've talked about writing summaries. We talked about this either early in this packet or in the last packet. You need to include important details. Let's go in and highlight 2 important details, and then you guys will write out the summary on your own, okay? So we have the 2 separate movements, right? So we have the movements of the industrialization movement, and then we have the arts and crafts movement, right? So it's important in your summary to mention the arts and crafts movement. as well as discussing the industrialization piece. So we're comparing here the arts and crafts movement and the industrialization. Okay, so what are two important things that we could include in our summary? Well, we could have that as Britain became more industrialized, furniture was often made in factories using principles called division of labor. Okay, so that was what Britain did when they took on industrialization. Now, the second important thing you could include could be talking about how the arts and crafts movement differs from that. So instead of having these things in factories, rather it required a master craftsperson who had honed the skill and talent needed to be personally invested in and responsible for the final product. So you need to write a summary and talk about how stuff used to be created by hand, and then industrialization came, so the arts and crafts movement happened, and then you need to hone in on these two main events that occurred, or the main things that they talked about in the piece, not even events. But if you need to, you can go back and look at those pages that we talked about where we were talking about summary. Race strategy doesn't actually really apply here now that I think about it. Just make sure that you are writing complete sentences and writing a summary. Okay, so that's just talking about the most important points from the story, and usually those are about 3, 4, 5 sentences to write a summary. So if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to me during office hours today, and tomorrow we'll be back in our writing packet for our last day before summer.